June the 2nd, 1983. Air Canada Flight 797 cruises through the early evening. The flight has taken an unsettling turn. Wisps of smoke are gathering at the back of the DC-9. An acrid smell is spreading through the cabin. The crew is growing concerned. They've already moved passengers towards the front of the jet, as far as possible from the creeping smoke. Captain Donald Cameron is waiting for an update from the back of the plane, when suddenly he's got a new problem. The master warning light is on. Electrical systems throughout the plane, including some in the cockpit, begin to fail.
The airplane basically lost all its sophisticated navigation and attitude information. So I was left very suddenly with, I think, 3 engine instruments per engine and 4 flight instruments, which were very primitive. They were what you might have flown a World War II bomber with.
With his electrical systems starting to shut down, Cameron calls the nearest ground control.
Memphis Center, this is Air Canada 797.
Air Canada 797, Indianapolis Center. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've got an electrical problem here. We may be off communication shortly. Stand by.
Co-pilot Claude Ouimet is at the back of the plane. The washroom door handle has become hot to the touch. He doesn't even risk opening it. Faced with a potential fire on board, the crew have no choice but to land their plane as soon as possible.
I don't like what's happening. I think we'd better go down. We're going to be making an emergency descent. Brief the cabin crew. Yes, sir.
As soon as the decision is made, another warning light goes on. They've just lost most of their emergency power.
We're talking about multiple failure here, and it's starting to be complicated. So we're going down, and obviously we have to land.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
A small problem has snowballed into an all-out emergency.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
This is Louisville Control, over.
Air Canada 797, we have a fire on board. We are going down.
Can you possibly make Cincinnati?
Roger that.
Cincinnati is 46 kilometers away. They can make it. Captain Cameron begins an initial descent to 1,500 meters. The crew has switched to emergency battery power, but many of the plane's instruments aren't functioning.
So all we had left was DC immer power, and that's only good for radios, basically.
It's not only instruments. Cameron finds that a critical piece of his plane isn't working properly. The horizontal stabilizer on the tail of his DC-9 is frozen. Cameron uses the part that's still working, the elevators, to make the plane dive. But like a car that's lost power steering, the aircraft resists. As Cameron pushes on the controls, they push back, with a pressure equal to 20 kilograms.
The airplane became very heavy, and I took my total concentration to fly the airplane.
An acrid, bitter smoke is creeping forward from the back of the plane and seeping in from the seams in the fuselage ceiling. It hovers like a cloud over the passengers' heads.
Incredibly harsh smoke that was really irritating your throat. You had to take really, really small breaths, otherwise you would choke.
I could see it rise. It was traveling along those luggage racks, you know, coming forward.
The smell of burning plastic fills the air. Dropping oxygen masks could make the situation worse.
I could have deployed the oxygen mask for the passengers, but it's forbidden. You're only allowed to use the oxygen mask in the case of a massive decompression or loss of cabin pressure, not for fire.
I was crying and scared. I wasn't hysterical. The gentleman sitting next to me explained to me that if I would not cry and if I could, conserve my, not breathe so fast, that it would conserve the oxygen, would help us, and not to worry, that the flight attendants, they really know how to handle these sort of situations.
As the electrical malfunctions ripple through the plane, the PA system shuts down. Flight attendants struggle to shout directions, but it's getting more and more difficult to breathe. In 1983, it's not standard procedure to tell passengers how to open the emergency doors. But in this case, the two flight attendants are taking no chances.
As plain as possible.
As smoke begins entering the cockpit, the captain's situation is becoming critical. For the first time, we met talks to the Cincinnati airport.
Approach, Air Canada 797. We're on Mayday. We're going down.
Air Canada 797, Cincinnati approach. Plan runway 36 ILS. And the equipment has been alerted. You have time to give me the nature of the emergency.
We have a fire in the washroom. We're filling up with smoke right now.
Say, type of aircraft, number of people on board, and amount of fuel.
We'll copy that later. We don't have time.
Gregory Karam is the approach tower controller. He's the lifeline for the struggling jet. He can't see the plane on radar yet, but he knows it's in trouble.
There was really no mayhem whatsoever, no screaming, nothing at all. In fact, it was very quiet and calm. And again, I was terrified at that point.
Almost 13 minutes after 7, Karam catches sight of Flight 797 on his radar.
Air Canada 797, you are now fully identified. This will be a no-gyro radar approach for runway 27 left. Descend now to 3,500 feet. Your position is now 12 miles southeast of the airport.
The crew needs to be guided in from the ground. Struggling to see through the dense smoke, they could easily veer off course. Karam will talk them down, watching them every step of the way. In the cabin, the smoke and heat are becoming unbearable.
My thought was, well, we're gonna crash. They won't be able to identify myself because I didn't have my papers with me, so I stood up, I took my wallet in the compartment and put my jacket on so that they could identify my body.
I knew at that point, that's when I decided or felt that I was not going to make it, because I felt I would never see my family again, and the situation just seemed very impossible.
Stan, he certainly had a sense of his own mortality, and he hated to fly. But the demand for Stan was growing, so he was flying more often. And he certainly had a sense that with so much traveling, his risk is elevated.
Where's the airport?
12 o'clock and 8 miles, Air Canada.
Okay, we're trying to locate it. We're going to need fire trucks.
They're standing by for you. Can you give me the number of people and amount of fuel?
We don't have time. Getting worse in here.
Understood, sir. Turn left now. You are 1/2 mile north of final approach.
Finally, the crew see the airport.
Okay, we have the airport.
The tower has you in sight. You need not acknowledge further transmission from the Air Canada 797. You are cleared to land. You are 4 miles from the airport. Good luck.
In a thick haze of smoke and soot, flight attendants Laura Kayama and Judy Davidson feel their way along the aisle, trying to reassure the passengers. They can't get past the 12th row. The smoke and the heat are overwhelming.
I was praying the whole time. Dear God, please help us land this plane. Please get this plane safely on the ground. see, can't breathe, death absolutely crossed my mind. But hang in there, don't give up.
I've been married for less than a year, and it's already over. So I started breathing as little as I could and start thinking seriously at my wife.
Fighting the reluctant controls, Captain Cameron's strength is being pushed to the limit.
"797, the tower has you in sight."
Squinting through the smoke, the crew of Flight 797 land hard. At 20 minutes after 7, the Air Canada plane is on the ground. It's less than 30 minutes since the first sign of any trouble on board Flight 797.
When we touch the ground, I assume that we're safe now. Now let's get out of this airplane.
But inside the plane, the smoke isn't letting up. Passengers are undoing their seatbelts and trying desperately to escape.
I got up out of my seat, and I remember putting my hands up on someone's back, and it was like waiting in a line. And I knew that was one line I didn't want to wait very long. So I turned around and went the other direction, not knowing I was actually heading towards the front of the plane.
Sergio Bonetti is the first one to the door. He helps gasping passengers escape. The cabin is pitch black and burning hot. In the cockpit, the crew quickly shuts the plane down. The first officer escapes through the emergency window. It's a 5-meter jump to the ground. Passengers have opened 3 of the overwing exits. But even with the doors open, the exits are all but invisible. The smoke is too thick.
I saw a light, and it was the door that had opened. Someone had opened the door. I realized what it was. I ran to the door and held my help. I just put my face out so I could breathe.
Passengers who have found the exits slide off the wing and stumble to safety. On the ground, Laura Kayama and Judy Davidson frantically move passengers away from the deadly plane. Fire rescue vehicles surround the plane. They douse the plane's exterior and the ground beneath with foam, fearing a fuel fire or worse, an explosion. Through the cockpit window, we can see Captain Cameron sitting in his seat looking dazed and slumped towards the wheel.
First thing that got my attention was to see Don's face in the window and realize that he was not completely conscious.
I couldn't get out of my seat. I'd start and I'd get my arse up in the air or like that, and I'd be pushed back by I have no idea, it was an invisible force, but it was probably smoke and fire.
Desperately trying to save the captain's life, tells firefighters to cover him with foam.
It was this soapy, ice-cold mixture that drenched me.
It works. Cameron stirs and climbs out through the cockpit window.
Stop! There he is! Don!
Barely 90 seconds have passed since the plane landed. when suddenly the whole interior of Flight 797 ignites. The flames roll through the cabin like a train. Captain Donald Cameron is the last person to get out of the plane alive.
We knew there were people in the airplane, unfortunately, at that point. That was finished.
The cabin fire breaks through the top of the fuselage. Black smoke can be seen for kilometers. Flight attendant Laura Kayama begins to count.
I will remember these words forever. She told us to line up so that she could count the survivors. If there were survivors, obviously they were dead.
Including the crew, there had been 46 people aboard the plane. But there aren't 46 people on the runway.
I really thought that if the pilot could land the plane, we would all get off. But I knew when I looked around, I didn't think we were all there.
The passengers who escaped the plane suffer from smoke inhalation and minor injuries, but most are not badly hurt.
It was almost like if you got off the plane, nothing was wrong. I mean, there was maybe a sprained ankle, maybe someone had a broken arm or something. You made it and you were completely fine, or you didn't make it.
The young man next to me that helped me with my breathing techniques didn't survive. That was a real tough blow, because I know, for one, I believe he played a big part in my survival.
I guess it was around midnight. I decided to call Air Canada. I said, I'm trying to find out if a friend of mine was on this flight in Cincinnati. And she said, are you a member of the family? I said, no, I'm just a close friend. And she said, do you know if his wife is alone? And I said, well, yes. And she said, well, she may need somebody with her.
Stan Rogers, the rising musical star, didn't make it off the plane.
Cincinnati ground. This is Captain of the Air Canada flight that's on fire here.
Captain Cameron radios Cincinnati ground control from an emergency vehicle near his plane. He has a sobering message.
It seems there are 23 people left on board the aircraft. Is there a scheduled carrier runs into here that could maybe give aid and shelter to our stranded passengers? It's pretty cold out here.
What began with a simple electrical problem has taken the lives of 23 people. What caused the deadly fire? What went so horribly wrong? The investigation will uncover the plane's troubling history. This DC-9 had another serious accident just a few years before.